Welcome back to Mystara, and be prepared to get sand everywhere, because this week we're headed back to the Hollow World to visit the second of the three empires, the Kingdom of Nithya. Much like Millennia, this book is very much ripped right from a real-world culture, in this case the ancient Egyptians, only with so much more magic. Get ready for a lot of rules, because this book goes into more detail about its nation than any book probably ever written for Dungeons & Dragons. I'm Mr. Welch, and today we're going to roll some d4s. Let's visit the Kingdom of Nithya. The Kingdom of Nithya was created in 1991 by Blake Mobley, and is probably his most famous work in D&D, with the exception of maybe The Feast of Goblins for Ravenloft. Newton Yule is given credit as the co-author, which stands out because, as far as I can tell, this is the only writing credit he's known for. He's mostly known for his art. The cover art is Fred Fields, with interior art being covered by Carl Waller. If you're going to get the maximum enjoyment out of this book, you're also going to need to buy Dragon Magazine 182, because a large number of charts needed for the book was somehow left out. A side note, while this book has the same page count as the other Gazetteers and World books, instead of using the 32-64 split the players and DMs guides are usually given, this one the two books are even at 48 pages each. The history of Nithya is pretty brutal, both before and after it got transported into the Hollow World. This nation loves civil wars. The nation is extremely magical in nature, putting even Glantry's mass-produced magic items to shame. It's extremely religious, which causes large problems for the kingdom. The pharaoh presents himself as an immortal, which transcends into the heavens when his time is up on this plane. Of course, this causes all sorts of power struggles in the meantime. The original downfall of Nithya was when the pharaoh brokered a deal with entropic powers to humble all the priests that dared to stand up to him. In the civil war that ensued, Nithya tore itself to the pieces. Only the single city of Rannoch was spared, and it was purged of those following the entropic immortals, and the survivors were sent to the Hollow World. The immortals didn't want a repeat of Nithya on the known world, so they came up with the spell of obliteration, which took out every bit of memory of the nation itself, so that the Nithians that were still there had no idea where they came from or how they got to where they were going. All the remnants of the Nithian Empire that still remain on the known world, like pyramids and such, nobody knows where they came from, so they just assume that somebody else built it, like the dwarves. Nithya at its height was on par with present-day Alphatia with its magic, and possibly even more powerful. They created new magics, made magic items on par with immortal artifacts. They supposedly created the gnolls by merging gnomes and trolls, but they always seem to be a joke explanation, because it's just making the word gnoll a portmanteau of gnome and troll. But that was something TSR was known for in its naming monsters. The Nithians kept their heavy magic-using ways in the Hollow World, but the difficulty of mages learning new magic in the Hollow World severely tamped down on the magic research. The name of Nithya is a bit confusing because it's actually the Kingdoms of Nithya, plural. The fourth pharaoh of the Hollow World, Nithya, decided to exercise an old grudge against the mayor of a town called Dashur, and forced him to relocate his city to the far north. This triggered a civil war that unleashed old Nithian magic and resulted in the destruction of the original capital and the near destruction of the rebel city. To stop this from ever happening again, the immortals once more wiped the Nithians' mind of their powerful magic and restored the empire a second time. The Nithian people are a caste-based society like so many of the Hollow World cultures. From bottom to top, you've got newly acquired slaves, which are mostly prisoners of war. They have no rights whatsoever. People who are born slaves are hereditary slaves, who actually have some rights. Then you have the peasant caste, which are more like serfs, only they can move to new towns if they need to. They are tied to their land, so if the land is sold, they serve a new master. If you own land or a business, then you're in the rank of the commoners. They have full rights and pass on their status to their children. Above the commoners are the nobles, and they, like the millennians, are divided into different types. The nobility in Nithya is divided between the clerics, the governors, and the military, but they can lose their status if they offend the pharaoh or commit a crime. The pharaoh has the highest rank, but below him are the two kings of Nithya, who govern the day-to-day operations of the northern and southern portions of Nithya. They divide the nation up into counties called nomes. I mean, it's N-O-M-E-S. I don't think they would call it gnomes with a pronunciation guide, but that's what it sounds like. And these are ruled by nomarchs. In reality, the pharaoh has assumed direct control of the northern kingdom and has eyes on taking over the southern kingdom as well, so a third civil war might be brewing in Nithya. The book makes a point of saying Nithians are specialists. You aren't a cook, you're a baker, or you're a grill master. They make a point of breaking down the classes in the player's book, showing that Nithians often fall into the trap of over-specialization. If you're a spearman in the Nithian army, you fight with a spear. You're not trained in anything else. Archers only train with bows. It follows the pattern for all the classes, with Nithian cultures assigning roles based on your family and keeping you not only in your caste, but your parents' job as well. If your father was a baker or a mason and a soldier, that's what you're going to be. The book mentions briefly that women are severely restricted in their career options, but then also says immediately after that, don't worry about it, play what you want to play, and it never really goes into any detail about how women are exactly treated. That seemed a little off by saying that women are basically second-class citizens and then saying don't worry about it because we're not going to bring it up at all in the middle of the game. One thing you will immediately notice is that magic is everywhere in Nithya. Many houses have small magical pyramids that store minor spells that help them maintain the house or groom its owners. They have boats that magically float above the water, chariots that fly across the ground on a flaming sheath, magic bracers that protect its wearers in combat, and those are extremely common in the armies. This also gives the fighters an in-game armor, as they don't wear armor at all because it's, the scorching desert of Egypt. The over-specialization of all the classes was an attempt to give the Beckme system kits like 2nd edition had, but they worded it in the book to the point of it sounds like it's mandatory to take a kit or a specialization to actually play a Nithian. Nithya has a lot of cities and regions discussed in the book, though only briefly because the DM's guide is only 48 pages, and 4 of those pages are wasted on trying to teach you hieroglyphics. You've got towns like Tothus that's intent on working its people to death, all the way back to Rannoch, which has rebuilt itself into a school of magic, and is still occasionally plagued by lingering magical energies. Each city has its own side plot, with a lot of them having one conspiracy or another going on. Nithians love conspiracies and plotting against each other. One entry that was extremely strange was about the village of Hapta, because for whatever reason it goes from the standard, straight-up, simple explanation like all the other entries have, to a narration of a story of how the Tanagora tribesmen migrated to become part of the Empire. This was the only entry that used that kind of narrative, and it just stands out as strange, because it immediately breaks with the rhythm of the way everything else was written, and it's the only thing that's written that way. Nithya is one of the most unique nations in all of Mystara, not just the Hollow World, because you've got ancient Egyptians sailing around on flying barges, or entire armies using magical bracers like they were just as easy to create as an iron dagger. It's a glaring contradiction of style, and one that will take your players by surprise. The book does suffer from the same problems the Hollow World creates. If you want to play a Nithian, you are, by design, heavily restricted in your options. Unless you want to take a severe penalty for inexperience to shake off the spell of preservation, you can't, for example, use that battle axe +3 you just found because Nithians don't use axes. That's a built-in problem of the Hollow World that served a purpose in keeping the setting intentionally stagnant, but it didn't age well at all. Finding a copy of the Nithian Empire will set you back about $40. It's not that hard to find, but it is a little bit harder to find than the Millennian Empire. The PDF is $5, and there's a print on demand for $11. But the print on demand comes with the problem there's about 4 pages of maps missing. It's mentioned in the comments on the drive-thru RPG that parts of the map are missing, and enough of the map is missing to be a problem. Next week I'm going to finish off the last of the Hollow World settings with the Sons of Azcan, the Aztec book. I'm writing down some suggestions on how to fix the problems created by the spell of preservation on player characters, because there's few people that have played in the Hollow World that don't agree that the spell of preservation is kind of stifling when it comes to creating characters. Then I've got a minor change in the reviews I've got coming up, because I know I said I was going to talk about fixing the Etruscan Gazetteer, but I'm going to push that back to talk about fixing the Etruscan, then the Irendi, then the Yalarum books. Though Yalarum doesn't need fixing so much as it just needs fleshing out. Those will be done after I finish up reviewing the 3 Immortal books. So after Sons of Azcan, I'm going to talk about how to combine the Known World, Savage Coast, Serpent Peninsula, Fey Kingdom, and Spirit World into a single cohesive setting your players can enjoy. Or in other words, getting rid of a lot of the continuity problems caused by having different setting books that acknowledge the existence of the other places but never mention them once and then contradict what the other books or in the other settings have said. But until next time, remember, he was born in Arizona and moved to Babylonia, King Tut.